Hey YouTube, this is Steve from Average Joe's Fantasy Football, and I am talking rookies for redraft season. These are guys that I believe are underrated and you should be going after this upcoming season, whether it be earlier in some of your drafts or in some late rounds in your 2023 redraft season to help you guys get some sleepers, maybe some players that are being overlooked. So hopefully this helps you guys out. I've got 5 players. So again, hopefully this will give you guys some insight and maybe a nice sleeper here or there to help you guys out. If you haven't already, make sure you guys check out our other videos. We've got some great mock drafts to give you some insight of where players are falling, maybe some players that are going up into the mock draft. So make sure you guys check that out. All right, so here are 5 players that are just rookies that are completely being underrated right now in ADP and rankings and everything that I've been seeing out there in the fantasy world. Now, I'm going to kind of do this a little bit different. I've got one player I'm absolutely you should always go after if you can in your drafts, and he's going to be my last player I'm going to mention. Now, the first player I'm going to mention is going to be Keon Coleman. Now, if you guys have watched any of my content, you guys have heard me talk about Keon Coleman just about every video. I love the kid. Being a Florida State fan, I got to see him in action. He's a fantastic receiver. Didn't show up very well, at least as we had hoped in the combine, which kind of really hurt his stock. But with that said, Buffalo saw something in him and still gave him a pretty good high draft capital, even though it was in the second round. So he's going into a position where he could be the wide receiver 1. Do I expect it day one? Not necessarily. I do think the Buffalo Bills will play this pretty safe early on in the season. I do think it's going to be Curtis Samuel, Shakir. Like those are going to be the guys who probably get the starting lineup when it comes to the first game or 2 of the season. Now, I would love to see Keon Coleman as the wide receiver 1, and I do believe he is building that rapport currently right now with Josh Allen. But Keon Coleman is one of those receivers that big body, good route runner, not a technician yet. I would love to see him get a little bit crisper on his routes. He can be somebody who just tries to bully the defensive back, which can be a little bit tougher to do in the NFL. These guys are big, they're fast, they're strong, and they're going to always be in the best position to try to stop you from running your route. So he does have some work to do when it comes to that in his game. But what I do love about him is his hands are great. He's a good red zone threat. Again, building up that reoccurring route running, reoccurring plays with Josh Allen's helpful. Training camp's going to be the biggest one for him. I would love to see him in the preseason. I want to see him get some work at this preseason to kind of see where he's at. The other thing I want to mention is the fact that, let's be honest, Gabe Davis and Stefon Diggs are gone. That's a lot of targets. That's 241 targets in 2023 that is now up for grabs. Shakir should see an increase. Curtis Samuel should see some targets his way. There's a good amount, at least 100 to 120 that I believe Keon Coleman will receive. Of course, it becomes the wide receiver 1. I mean, Stefon Diggs had 160 targets last season. I don't expect that for Keon this year, but I do think 100 to 120 is very viable. And the fact that he's being treated as wide receiver 46 in most, drafts and rankings, man, he could be a top 25 to 30 receiver, but he's falling. So I would absolutely think he should be somebody you're grabbing this upcoming season. Another player, another receiver, Xavier Legette. Now, Legette right now is being treated as ranking wide receiver 57 among a lot of different websites that you can check. The one thing I will say and caveat with Legette is the fact that he only had really one good season in college, which was his senior year. He had over 1,200 receiving yards. He had 7 touchdowns. He balled out. He did a great job, and he did well at the combine. And the fact is, I do think this offense could possibly support him somewhat. Now, Legette is going to be somebody that I believe will have to absolutely dominate in the training camp. Maybe an injury or something like that can help him. He's not somebody I'm saying you have to draft early. If you're in a deep league, if you're in a team that's got maybe 3 or 4 receivers on your roster and maybe got a couple flexes, maybe Legette makes sense. You do have to understand, though, this offense is going through a change. I do like the change that the Carolina Panthers are going through, but you have Deontay Johnson there. You have Adam Thielen. and even the latest mock depth chart or whatever you want to call it for training camp has Mingo as a starting possible receiver. So we don't know how this is going to truly play out. I think Legette ends up moving up in the roster. I think he's going to be somebody you can grab. Again, we're talking deeper leagues and definitely in your later rounds, but wide receiver 57 is where he's being treated right now. And he could end up being higher than that because of this offense. I think Deontay Johnson really takes advantage in this offense, but I think Legette possibly shows up. I could see where even Thielen gets possibly moved on from this season. We'll see how things play out. A lot of people are forgetting about him, but he was dominant last season for the Panthers. Early on in the season, he did kind of fizzle towards the end, but I still think Legette is somebody you should definitely keep an eye on. Spend a late round, and I think you'd be really happy with grabbing him in your roster. Now, my quarterback that I want to mention on here is going to be Jayden Daniels. He's the only rookie quarterback I'm going to probably go out on a limb and grab because of his upside. Don't get me wrong. Caleb Williams, I think, is going to have a great season. And I do believe he's probably going to be drafted a lot sooner than probably most people are going after Jayden Daniels. Right now, Jayden Daniels is being treated as QB 13. So if we're talking a 12-team league, he's right on the outside of that. I will say this, though. Jayden Daniels is going to a team where Sam Howell, who I like, but is not Jayden Daniels. Sam Howell finished as QB 12 last season. And that was with turnover issues. That was with sacks he was taking. There were a lot of factors. And that was also with Howell only getting 263 rushing yards on the ground. So with that said, Jayden Daniels comes in, rushed over 1,100 yards last season, rushed 800 yards before that. He had 50 total touchdowns last season in college for LSU. Jayden Daniels is a playmaker. I expect Jayden Daniels to have 400 to 500 rushing yards. I expect Jayden Daniels to have 20 to 25, possibly even 30 total touchdowns this season alone, kind of getting familiar with the NFL. I think he can be better than QB 13. I think he could be better than QB 10. But right now he's being treated right outside of that. And unless you're in a super flex, Jayden Daniels may not even get drafted early on at all in most drafts. So the fact that you could get him a lot later and have a steal, like he could be somebody who's going to possibly win you some leagues. I really think he's being underrated right now, and I absolutely love Jayden Daniels. Another player you may want to consider, and this is going to be a little bit tougher to swallow because we're talking tight ends, and tight ends is such a hard position. And Ben Sinnott is the guy I'm going to mention. He's right now being treated as tight end number 19. I think he could possibly be higher than that. Ben had over 650 yards receiving last year, and we have to be honest, tight ends aren't something that colleges absolutely utilize, right? They're not utilizing tight ends like you would like to see compared to the NFL. Sinnott has a great opportunity here, having success with his rookie counterpart in Jayden Daniels, having the ability to get and replace Logan Thomas, who saw over 75 targets his way. And I think a way more efficient route running tight end. I like Logan Thomas. He definitely had some injuries that really hindered his career. I thought he had some shine, and I thought he was going to be the future. And then on top of that, you're getting a whole new offensive coordinator in Cliff Kingsbury, and we'll see how this plays out for this offense. So Sinnott is somebody that I really like. You don't have to spend a lot of draft capital on at all. And I think he could finish in the top 15 or so. So what I mean by that is he should be somebody you might want to consider putting on your roster if you have a deep league and you need to maybe have a backup tight end option because of another tight end out there. Now, if you're in a 10-team league or an 8-team league, Sinnott's not somebody I would probably consider drafting at all. But if you're a 12 to even a 16, Ben Sinnott should absolutely be drafted. And because of where he's falling right now, he's going to be a nice little steal. Now, my number one player you should go after is Malik Nabers. Look, I don't like that he went to the New York Giants. I think a lot of people agree with that. That was not the landing spot everyone had hoped for Nabers to go to. I understand the concerns for Daniel Jones. I understand this offense where nobody knows what's going to happen. You've got a new running back, obviously, with Singletary instead of Saquon. But you still have Brian Daboll. I think Daboll is a good coach. I think Daboll will get Nabers plenty of opportunities his way. And right now, Nabers is being a highlight reel all training camp so far. His talent and his ability is going to overcome some of the challenges we're going to see with Daniel Jones. Some of the challenges this offense may have. You're seeing in the highlights currently right now, Nabers is getting force-fed down the field. He looks great in his routes. even in the scrimmage they had against the Lions, he was still beating other defenders that are not his own teammates. And I get it. It's training camp. A lot of players are going to really stand out and may have absolutely a horrible season. Nabers is not someone I don't believe is going to happen. Right now, he's being treated as wide receiver 23 in a lot of rankings. So he's right outside or just under that second wide receiver role in your team. And I do think he can be a really strong wide receiver 2, borderline wide receiver 1, depending on how things really do play out for the Giants. I think Nabers absolutely should be someone you target every single time you're doing a draft this season. In a lot of mock drafts right now, I'm seeing him fall in the 3rd or 4th round, and I don't hate that. I'm not going to stretch and grab him in the 2nd, but 3rd and 4th round I think is a great opportunity to grab a player like Nabers who's talented, who could finish in that top, again, borderline low wide receiver 1, really high end wide receiver 2 avenue, and have a very, very successful season and put up a lot of points for your fantasy team. So again, Malik Nabers is definitely someone I am going to target every single time if I have given the opportunity. So again, make sure you go after him. Make sure you go after some of these other players I mentioned here. If you guys think there's some other rookies I didn't mention, hit me up in the comments down below. I'd love to see what you guys' thought processes are. I'd love to see what players you guys are targeting. Maybe some of these players you don't like. Maybe you're going to say, hey, Steve, you shouldn't put Xavier Legette on there. Let me know in the comments. I'd love to see. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel. Make sure you guys hit that like button. Check out our other videos, like our mock draft videos. Check out some of our Dynasty content if you guys are in Dynasty. And I'll check you guys out next time.